Yes.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of Innovative Tools for Evidence-Based Policy. This is the track 3 regarding governance ethics. And the main title of this track will be Managing Legal and Ethical Challenges and Constraints in Digital World. I will just briefly introduce you to the main agenda of this session, and then I will leave the floor to our speakers. So first of all, I'll present myself. My name is Marco Lauro, and I'm a legal trainee at Grimaldi Studio Legale. And I was part of the Duet project, alongside with my colleague Martina Piantoni. And today we will have now, I will just briefly introduce the main topic for about 10 to 15 minutes. So I will just try to be brief. And after we will have 30 minutes, 10 minutes per speaker, 30 minutes discussion with speakers. And after the speakers will have presented their session, we'll have a 30 minutes panel discussion. The first one to speak will be Martin Taborda and Alberto Bettiol regarding managing legal ethical limits to big data use for policymaking. Then we'll be speaking Mr. Vanni Resta regarding ethic issue for people involved in climate change intervention and environmental sustainability. And then Miss Marina Cugurra that will make a presentation regarding legal and ethical issues in public policy development, the AI for public approach. And after that, as I said, we will have a panel discussion that should last about 30 minutes. So I will just, as I said, very briefly introduce you to the main topic of today's topic, and then I will stop sharing my screen and I will leave the floor to the first speaker. So as it was previously said during the pitch session, this part is basically concerning the ethics and how the ethics is becoming much more important when it comes to the use of personal data. In fact, as you may see here, when developing data-driven policy management tools, it should be kept a close eye on legal and ethical aspects. This derives from the fact that data management tools are, as well as new AI technologies, are raising legal issues, especially related to privacy and data protection. This derives from the fact that an enormous amount of data is acquired through these instruments, and of course, an enormous amount of data is used. The problem is that data acquired maybe are used for purposes that are different from the purpose for which they have been caught. The main topic here, I think, is more ethic, because we are not used maybe to discuss ethical issues when thinking about legal arguments, but the concept here is what are the main ethical concerns that are raised in the use of personal data. And of course, the main, we can say the main question is ethic is, we can say, is a personal topic. I mean, we do not, everybody does not share the same ethical conduct. That's not, and also everybody does not have the same ethical code of conduct. So should we be able to develop an ethical code of conduct regarding data management tool, AI technologies, and data-driven decisions? So I think that I will stop here. So I will just, as I said, I was just briefly introducing you to the main argument. So I will leave the floor to the first two speakers that are Martin Torb and Alberto Bettiol. I will just briefly introduce both of you, and you will have 10 minutes to speak, so you have to split your time. Martin is a partner at ECT Legal Consulting, and He took this degree from Lisbon University and pursued an LLM at King's College, and regarding intellectual property and information law. And by the time he passes the Portuguese Bar Association exam, he started working at ECT, where now he is partner. Alberto is working with him at ECT Legal Consulting. He is also partner there, and he has a great and relevant experience in multinational companies regarding management of privacy and privacy-related risk. And he started his career in legal departments of important companies. And starting from 2020, he is partner of ECT Legal Consulting and fellow researcher of Italian Institute for Privacy. So I will stop sharing my screen. So if you want to share your presentation, and I don't know who of you is starting between you two. So the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Marco. Hi, everybody. My name is Martim. I'll be starting, and then I will pass the floor over to my colleague Alberto. Give me 1 second so I can set the screen up. Okay. So, yeah. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, we do.
Great. So today, Alberto and I are here to talk about the difficulties in managing legal and ethical constraints when it comes to the use of big data for policymaking, especially when this processing of big data is supported by technologies such as cloud computing and artificial intelligence mechanisms to make the derivation of insights from such data more effective and more efficient. So we will go over this topic in the context of the Policy Cloud project, which is a project in which we are participating as partner to provide legal and ethical consultancy. We will discuss some of the challenges that arise for a project such as Policy Cloud from the legal and ethical perspective, the methodology that we've executed to try to address these challenges in the context of the project, which may also translate to other similar projects and activities. And finally, we'll discuss some of the specific challenges and solutions that we've identified in the context of this project, which may be interesting to discuss further with any of the members of the audience and other panelists. So to start with, the Policy Cloud project, to be very generic and brief about its purpose, the goal is to create a platform which will allow policymakers to better harness the power of big data in their policymaking activities. The idea is to create a sort of tool to assist policymakers in their decision-making so that they can rely on something more than their experience, their intuition, their gut feeling, but actually leverage evidence in the form of data to a very significant scale. And the idea being that, the premise being that policies which are created based on big data, based on actual hard evidence rather than soft approaches to policymaking, will be more effective and more efficient and measurable to make sure that this effectiveness is achieved. So the way that this is done is through a platform which is designed around the ability to curate data from several heterogeneous different data sources, ingest that data into the platform through a data transformation process, which includes data validation and data cleaning activities, as well as verification of any corrupt data or inconsistent data. Enhancing the interoperability of different data sets, and then subjecting the result, so the transformed data, to further analytical processes. And then from those analytical processes, a certain output will be produced, which policymakers can use to make decisions. This is supported by several components. Very quickly, we could discuss the policy development toolkit, which is designed to be a sort of front end for the platform where users can use the platform to create specific policies after deciding what data sets are relevant and what analytics tools they want to apply. There's also a policy management framework, which allows several different policies created through the toolkit to be managed in terms of checking their effectiveness and comparing their results. The data marketplace is foreseen as a platform which can be used to share assets between Policy Cloud users, such as data sets, analytical tools, or created policies or collections of policies. And all of this is supported by a cloud-based framework to ensure the more effectiveness and efficiency in resource consumption. The models and tools that are used to apply analytics to the datasets are agnostic to the datasets, so they can be reused for multiple datasets. And in fact, new tools can also be registered on the platform. There's a process for this. And all of this is supported by a legal and ethical framework that we have developed, considering all the different issues that we've detected and which we will discuss further ahead, where we identified specific requirements for the platform to be compliant with a high standard of legal and ethical quality. And these requirements are measured over time. Now, the requirements for the platform can exist agnostically of how the platform is used. But in the context of the project, we also have 4 use cases, which are driven by 4 different pilots and which have their own legal and ethical concerns. Because as you might imagine, when you're considering a platform such as Policy Cloud or any platform to use big data for policymaking, it's not just about looking at what the platform can do, it's also about looking at how the platform will be used in a specific context. Each of these use cases, as you can probably imagine from just looking at their titles, have very different contexts, different geographical locations, and different purposes driven by the respective pilots. So some of the challenges that we've faced so far can be seen on screen. We don't have too much time to go into them in detail, but we can cover them very quickly. They can basically be built around 3 sort of pillars that a platform like Policy Cloud needs to deal with. The first is obviously the pillar of big data. So the fact that we will collect a mass amount of information, which may include personal data as well, into the platform for ingestion and analytics. So there we can arrive at problems such as there being a lack of transparency in decisions that come out of the use of big data. It might not be clear to individuals who are affected by a policy how those decisions were made and where the data source to make decisions inside a policy what came from. There's, of course, an imbalance in the information available to the users of data and the owners or subjects of that data. There's the possibility for data sets to not only be incompatible between each other, but also have been created in a biased manner. And that bias within the data set can infect the rest of the policymaking process. And of course, where personal data is involved, there are multiple privacy concerns involving how to allow people to access their data and exercise their data subject rights, transparency as mentioned above as well, and security concerns related to possibilities for personal data breaches. Cloud computing increases the efficiency and effectiveness of the process, but it also increases the exposure of the process to multiple points of attack, as opposed, for example, to a solution which would be fully on-premise. So there is exposure of the data to interception or loss. Availability downtime on the platform can also be a relevant concern. Where where a complex processing chain is used, which involves multiple players in a cloud infrastructure, there's the possibility for loss of control of what happens with data, and there's environmental sustainability concerns to be aware of as well. Finally, AI algorithms used in the analytics tools applied to the data can also create issues when it comes to a legal and ethical standard. For one, it's making sure that the users of the platform retain some sort of human agency and oversight over what these analytical tools do. So it's important for users to be able to understand how decisions are made by the platform so that they can use their own critical judgment as policymakers to understand the output provided by the platform and apply it to their specific context. We also need to be careful of bias in the algorithms that are used to create these AI tools. And of course, where an AI could be manipulated or attacked in order to create unfair or misleading results, this could infect the entire policymaking process as well, with the impacts at the individual, community, and even societal level. So I will pass the floor to Alberto to look into more detail how this was addressed in the context of the Policy Cloud project.
Thank you, Martim, and hello, everybody. This is Alberto Bettiol, and I am also a partner of ICTLC Legal Consulting, working as a legal and ethical advisor in the Policy Cloud project. Starting from now, I will try to take let's say a deep dive on the methodology that we applied in order to ensure the legal and ethical and regulatory sustainability of this project. In this slide, you can see the overall, let's say, description of the key components of the projects, and you can understand which are the main data flows, and somehow, let's say, understand which risks are underlined under these data flows. Starting from data acquisition, from the stakeholders that are providing the data, there is for sure an issue that is related to the lawfulness of the collection of this data on the one hand, and on the other hand, there is also a challenge relating to the identification of the level of accuracy of the data that are collected and ingested in the Policy Cloud project. After ingesting the data and storing them on the platform, for sure there is another key component of the project which is related to security of the same project and the risk of data breach, mostly related to cybersecurity attacks. On the third step, we have data analytics, so the use of the data collected and stored in order to analyze them and process them in order to produce the policies. And obviously, there is the risk related to the use of artificial intelligence technologies, and mainly the risk related to discrimination and biases connected to these technologies. And in the end, we have the policy making output, and to this regard, the main ethical and legal challenge is the one related to the, let's say, intelligibility of these policies to both the policymakers and the stakeholders on the one hand, and finally the necessity to assure that there is an acceptable level of human intervention in defining the policies to comply with what we call the human rule of law principle, in order to avoid that a policy is totally defined by a machine, an algorithm. If we can go forward to the next slide, you can see the methodology that we, as a legal advisor to the project, have applied in order to support the technical partners of the consortium in managing the legal issues. The first step has been an overall understanding of the key components of the project, and on the other hand, a study of the relevant legal standards, regulatory standards, and also relevant legal literature and scientific literature on the ethical and legal risks related to the project, as Martin highlighted them before. So the use of big data, the risk related to the use of cloud systems, and obviously also the risks related to artificial intelligence. After defining this high-level analysis, which was included in a dedicated deliverable, we defined a set of practical requirements that were to be implemented by each of the work packages to ensure that the components that they are working on are compliant with relevant legal, ethical, and societal standards. And we are currently working in the third phases, which is the implementation. After the identification of the key requirements and the checklists, we are continuously assisting and consulting and advising the technical partners in how they need to implement the legal and ethical requirements we have identified in the previous two steps in the technical components and in each of the use cases. If we can go, okay, thank you. So here you can see an example of an extract of the checklist that we are using. So for each of the work packages, as I anticipated, we have identified the key requirements, also prioritizing them based on their list level and defining a red, amber, and green level of priority. And we have included our analysis in a deliverable, which is the societal and ethical requirements and guidelines of the project. If we can for the last slide, and here you can see some examples of the key implementation steps that we have undertaken. For example, in the general project management activity regarding security, we have developed a checklist based on an ISO requirements on security, and we are currently revising and implementing these requirements. Regarding the WP3 on cloud infrastructure, we have worked on the contractual agreement with the cloud service provider in order to ensure that a satisfying level of security and compliance with privacy laws are ensured. And on WP4, regarding analytical tools, we are currently working on the requirements related to the compliance of the artificial intelligence systems with applicable ethical and legal standards. In WP5, we are working on let's say the privacy development toolkit, and we are working to define and implement the requirements in order to ensure that the policies that are to be implemented are intelligible, can be understood by the relevant stakeholders. In WP6, more practically, we are working with the use case partners to implement each of the before mentioned requirements in their specific use cases. And finally, in the context of WP7 on data marketplace, we are defining the contractual and legal requirements in order to make these the outputs, the data and the policies accessible to the general public and interested stakeholders. But to do so, obviously, we need to define the limits on ensure that the data, both the data and the policies, are exploited in a legal and ethical manner. So that's all from our side. It was a pleasure to participate in this meeting, and we look forward for any question.
Thank you very much to both of you. It was super much appreciated, super much interesting, your presentation. I think now we will have speaking Mr. Vanni Resta from DECIDO. I will just briefly introduce you, Vanni, and then the floor will be yours. Vanni has a very long-lasting experience in European Union research and innovation project, and from 2016 he has started being a lecturer in different academic institutions in Italy, in postgraduate market at La Sapienza University, as well as Agla University and Uninettuno. He's an observer of new ethical questions in the field of sustainability, inclusion, and digital transformation. And he was appointed recently by DG Clima as ambassador of the European Climate Pact. So, Mr. Vanni, the floor is yours. Please share your presentation, and we'll mute my microphone now.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you for the introduction. Let me share my presentation in a second. All right, here we are. Hope you can see the presentation now. Let me now give the snapshot of the topics I want to mention in this presentation. I know I want to respect my limit of 10 minutes for this presentation. So basically, my presentation will be split in three parts. The first one is the schema, as you can see, of the DECIDO data, mentioning which kind of data we are using, we are dealing with the project, with the DECIDO project, the personal data storage, and what we are implementing in terms of technical features such as anonymation for protecting the privacy of the data. The second part is how to pass from data to decision making, and this is of course very crucial. And I will introduce the catalog of the data catalogs components that we are developing. A second part will be dedicated to the mapping of the stakeholder, as defining which are the categories of stakeholder we are having in the project. The third part, of course, is the maximum part of the presentation, is the policy making expected impact, mentioning which are the benefits we want to have with the DECIDO project in terms of policy making, and then mentioning the benefit for the society, without forgetting an issue very important in the evaluation, in the assessment, which is the ethic issue. So let's start. This is the schema of our project, DECIDO. As you can see, we have the first part, which is related to the different kind of data we are dealing with. You can see there are some catastrophes data, of course, for the object, the goal of the DECIDO project to deal with climate change and supporting how and reacting against this phenomena. The second part is the co-creation activity. This is, in terms of privacy, our main concern, because co-creation, we are now having a lot of debate upon the fact that all these stakeholders which are co-creating our processes should be, in a sense, profiled. And this is something that, in terms of privacy, should be treated with a special attention. The third side, the third part, as anticipated, is the policy making. So in the last part of the flow, how to having the data, using it, and co-creating processes, and then defining policy making. Just to have a snapshot of the data we are using in the project, I have to mention probably this is redundant because my colleagues which already made the other presentation of the project already talk about it, but just to have an idea on the different and the dramatic different data we are dealing with. As you can see in the 4 pilot sites we are having now in this moment, my colleague Fabio Perosini is mentioning about the stakeholder engagement in the Maisino Park in Turin, in Italy, which is one of the pilot sites. You can see up on the right. Then we have in Kajani in Finland, another case dealing with forest fire, which is something very, very tough, considering also the geographical positioning and the feature, the pedologic feature of the site. Then we have another kind of data which are dealing with another effect of the climate change now we are facing with. So the power outage in 80 Greek municipalities. So just to image the quantity of data we are using in this pilot site. And then in Aragon region in Spain, we have wildfires another different catastrophe to be managed in the DECIDO program. As anticipated in the index, we are now having different solution in terms of storage of data. Of course, different kind of pilots that needs to have a different solution. But in the project, we decide to make the possibility to choose also without reinventing the wheel, but instead facilitating the process of storage of data. And so that we are similar solution like in Finland and in Italy with the NS infrastructure, but the Greek pilot is using the EOSC, the European platform, and in Spanish another solution here, just to have an idea which are the technical partner helping the pilot side and giving the technical support. Let me give, because this is something that we decide to harmonize as such as possible in the project. So what is related with the data anonymization, and so we suggested as a policy for the project, not the policy developed to be developed in the future, but just the pre-existing policy to use the solution amnesia just to anonymize data. As you can see in the 4 different category of data, we are dealing a lot of data and also sensible data. Image just if we have some special processes to recovery during a catastrophe, some people who is living in the site of the affected by this phenomena, this hazard. And so for this reason we have to keep into deep consideration the anonymization, and this could be standardized for all the cases. Here from this is moving from the data to the decision making of what we are having. So as you can see, this is the process is is circular. So we are writing storytelling for pilots' needs and change to be adapted. We want to understand what services the EOS can provide. And we have to define the definition of the catalog. And now we are illustrating in the next slide with this the different components of the data catalog created by the project. Of course, this is the external side, the exogenous side that is, in terms of data privacy, is very complicated. So the data from the co-creation activities. In fact, as I mentioned before, this is creating us a lot of trouble in defining a policy, a correct policy for protecting data of the co-creator or in the co-creation activities. The definition, of course, of this chopper of data are working with, so the definition on how to use the selected data, the implementation of different algorithms to analyze those data, and also in defining algorithms, we can have some data privacy trouble, and of course we are dealing with all this technical and juridical issue for protection of data. Afterwards, the visualization of the dashboard to take decisions, and this is really the final part, the goal, the scope to create new policies. In fact, improve policies based on evidence, fact, on real-time situation occurred during the pilot phase. And then you can see the circularity of the process, that at this stage we're starting another time to write storytelling of new needs or to refine the needs discovered during the first phase of the implementation. As you can see here, the data catalog components, we have the European data portal, we have data from portal from municipalities, repositories of data from municipality, as in this moment again Fabio is describing for Turin. Then we have the data from the co-creation activities, and here also from this picture of this table, very a crowd, you can see how the impact could be strong in terms of data privacy. Then we have a European Open Science Cloud, EOSC, of course, as mentioned, especially in a pilot site. Then we have satellite data from Copernicus or Corinne and infrastructure, another way to define a special procedure in terms of data privacy. Then, of course, there is the components of crowdsourced data, here not a big impact in terms of privacy, and then the GIS data also not very impacting on the privacy as well. Here, just to have an idea of we define in the project 4 different categories of stakeholders. So you can see it's like a Venn diagram. In this one with the interpolation of subset of stakeholders. We have latents, promoters, defenders, and then the general audience. You can see here the interaction in the bottom, in the upper part of right. You can see the political actor very close to the social actors, and the boxes among the boxes of promoter and defender, just having an idea on what we are dealing with. These are the categories: policymakers, of course, citizens, of course, citizens involved in the crisis stages during the hazard of climate change, businesses, of course, and research centers. These are in the 4 mentioned categories, the typology of stakeholder. Let's moving now from the policy making expected impact. Let me say, I want to read together with you this important foreword. Either on internet, on paper sources are full of disquisition on data protection from the political and legal point of view, but the impact in the economies has no far been ignored. Furthermore, the impact on green economy seems to belong to Mars, and this is something that we are struggling with, because this is the last part, also affecting with my role in protecting the environment and environment sustainability. These are the policy making benefits. Again, it's very understandable after what I told. Policymakers could be able to reduce the time need to generate good quality of service, which are crucial in the emergencies, for example, and this for improved policy making services. Citizens are actively participating, contribute to public policy making. And also better information is a crucial activities and the benefit of a policy making. Businesses will accelerate innovation, of course, and business development by reducing costs relating to the innovation generation and the transition and the acquisition of new knowledge. Research center and scientists will access a large volume of data for scientific purposes for investigation during the project, and also after the project will end. Now let's move to something that is very warmly heartful for me, important. So this often forgotten ethic issue. I want to mention, let me make a process on what is happening. The important, the cornerstone that changed our attitude and should be more, little by little increase in all our policies is the fact that the European Parliament approved the taxonomy regulation, where Article 3, letter B, and 17 established the term, which is the economic impact, whether the economic impact is environmental sustainable. Then there is the now for all we participant attenders to this conference. We are dealing with the Horizon Europe proposal project, and so the principle of the NSH, do not significant harms, is something that we are dealing with in writing also proposals, and this should be considered also in data privacy and ethic issue. We cannot forget it is impossible because it's a challenge we have to cope. The climate is changing dramatically, and so we have to consider also the do not significant harms also in privacy and ethic issue. Let me say that, of course, we are starting in the DECIDO project. We haven't still produced a DPIA, but I can anticipate that for sure we will consider also as a part of the environmental impact as one of the main important outcome of the methodology. I can suggest about how to develop the DPIA. There are a lot of tools, shareware. There is one more very nice, also developed by the CNIL, the French Authority of Data Privacy. You can find it shareware. Probably we will use that, but we want to for sure adapt and increase it by considering once again the environmental impact. And this, let me conclude with this. Marco already anticipated my profile, the tribute that DG Clima given to me to appoint me as an ambassador of the European Climate Pact. Let me say sustainability in the environmental issue is really something that we have to cope, not in the future, and not as an exercise, a theoretical exercise, as a real practice. Thank you so much for this invitation to the conference.
Thank you very much, Vanni, for your presentation. Sorry if I pushed you, but we are on a tight schedule today. So I think that now we have our last but not least speaker, who is Miss Marina Cugurra. I will just super briefly introduce you because we are running a few minutes late. Marina Cugurra is a lawyer specialized in research and development project, especially for what concerns legal issues in privacy, data protection, intellectual property, and exploitation. She is an expert in ethical and societal themes related to ICT research and technological development concerning research and development project. She has consolidated experience in national projects and European projects, as well as she's serving as independent ethical expert for the European Commission. So, Marina, the floor is yours. Please.
Good morning, and thank you for the invitation to this very interesting event. I'm now sharing my screen. Can you see it? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. And thank you also for the kind introduction. Let me add that I am also serving as external ethics advisor in several European projects since many years. And I have collaboration in place or past experience with the National Research Council in Italy and with the National Research University of Ireland, in particular with the Insight Center and many other public institutions and administration, as well with multinational companies. Last point is that I am now the chair of the Ethics, Data Protection and Privacy Task Force within the Citizen Control of Personal Data Initiative of the Smart City Marketplace. And I am pleased to invite you all to join our task force to work together in this interesting topic. Today, I will briefly introduce you the AI for public policy approach regarding the legal and ethical issues in public policy development. The project is a joint effort of policymakers and AI experts aimed at unveiling the potential of artificial intelligence for trustworthy development of public policies. Its main outcome will be an open cloud platform for automated, transparent, citizen-centric policy development and management based on a set of AI technologies. It is really key, the citizen-centric approach. The technological artifacts which are under development in the project are going to be validated in 5 pilot sites, the first of which is in Athens, the second in Italy, in particular in Genoa, another in Cyprus, another in Lisbon, and the last in Bulgaria. Each of them has different policies involved, even if there is some overlapping between them. For instance, they range from the policies for infrastructure maintenance to the policies for parking space management and urban mobility, citizen business service optimization, accessibility, energy management and optimization, as well as water infrastructure planning and maintenance. Of course, the solution of the project rely on large amount of data and data sets. Each of the pilot foresee the use of specific data set. We can mention, for example, that in the Athens pilot, there will be the large use of incident management data, incident picture, parking data, whilst in Genoa, the main data sources will regard the interaction between the municipality offices and the citizens and businesses, and also information about the service fulfillment times and regarding the citizen satisfaction feedback. On the other hand, in Nicosia, the main data sources will regard the mobility platform for different transport modalities and parking areas, as well as, for instance, citizen satisfaction information. In Lisbon, we have energy consumption records, as well as weather data, building characteristic data. Whilst in Burgas, we focus on water management, installation and operation data set, and also on the condition-based monitoring data on smart pipes from a factory facility named X. The policy-making challenges are diversified and for each of the pilot, and the expected impact of each of them is different, even if they have commonalities. We can mention, for instance, that in Athens, they are looking to AI for public policy to address the challenges regarding the complex and age infrastructure and the resource demanding task for managing them. We can mention that in Genoa, the main strategic goal is the facilitation of the relationship between the public administration and local actors through ICT tools. And so we are moving to develop a data-driven policy about the planning of the citizens and business services, including also insight on how resources can be optimally allocated, what kind of training should be provided, and how the services and department must be organized, and even more. Moving to Nicosia, the main challenge is to address holistic mobility and accessibility platform. And in this regard, the expected impact is to have integrated urban mobility policies helping citizens to optimize their use of the various transport services and to allow the municipality to gather a wealth of data regarding the usage of urban mobility services. Whilst in Lisbon, the main aim is to be able to design, implement and monitor sustainable energy and climate action plan. In Bulgaria, the policies which are under attention AI for public policy are mainly related to the maintenance, services and repair of the water management infrastructure. As you can imagine, all this policy development and management imply and raise a lot of legal and ethical implications. We can mention here some of them. For instance, the first regards the use of considerable amount of personal data, which are going to be collected with public records, sensor placed in public spaces, as well as IoT data sources and social media sources. All this personal data and also the secondary use of previously collected data need to follow specific ethical requirements and to be compliant with GDPR and national data protection legislation in terms, for instance, of consent procedure, data minimization, privacy by design and by default approach, and also in terms of implement adequate anonymization and pseudo-anonymization procedures, as well as of measure to avoid any kind of re-identification. We are going to produce a data protection impact assessment at project level, and we have also appointed a DPO at project level, which will support the DPOs of the partners. Another kind of ethical issues and legal issues regard the use of simulated data. In order to give rise to fair and accountable policies, it is necessary to have the sufficiently large amount of data and with the relevant and representative properties. Only in this way, they can really and effectively substitute the real-life data for the automated learning processes. Another point regards the need to ensure the high quality of the data to be used to train the machine, avoiding any kind of missing, unknown, or false values and records. Only in this way, we will be able to produce really ethical and fair, trustworthy policy. Moving to the use of the deep learning and machine learning techniques in our project, they raise a number of ethical challenges and issues. But we can mention the fact that the administrative staff of the municipalities has usually no training and a limited understanding of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And therefore, it is important that they are aware of the possible biases and unfair processing and inference. There is the need to prevent thus that this leads to the generation of unfair policies due to their limited knowledge of the impact of the learning parameterization of the output. Last point regard the need to add to the citizens' validation that we are planning in the different pilots also a sort of technical policy validation procedure. In order to be able to detect and eliminate situations where the policy output discriminates potentially and treats citizens unfairly, as well in order to assess the quality of the output of the tools used by the project. In our project, we are going to use the Altai assessment list, the assessment list for trustworthy AI, which was developed by the same high-level expert group which prepared the ethics guidelines for trustworthy AI. And we are going to focus on each of the requirements foreseen by these guidelines. As you can see, these legal and ethical aspects are really important in our project. And for this reason, we also have a dedicated task specifically addressing them, where we are implementing and defining the ethical management strategy, mobilizing the ethical board, which we established, and in order to ensure compliance of the project outcomes, but also of the project activities with all the applicable laws and regulations. The oversight roles in our project are the Ethical Advisory Board and the Data Protection Officers. These kind of issues has a transversal nature in the work plan, and they are used both, they are relevant both in terms of requirement elicitation, legal and ethical requirement elicitation, and in the validation in the use case and pilot. And of course, they are also key for the technical work packages, where we are developing IED's policy manager application and tools compliant with these legal and ethical constraints. It is all from my side. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Marina, for your presentation. It was super interesting, and thanks everybody for the work that you provided us. So I think that now it is time for the panel session. So asking if there is anybody that has question for our speakers regarding their presentation or topics that they want to know more about. Feel free to write it in the chat or to raise your hands via Zoom.
I would like to ask the speaker in just one line, in one sentence, what would be their recommendation for policymakers in terms of ethics? I know it's very broad and it's very generic, but in one line, what would be their recommendation, their takeaway message?
Shall I start? Okay. I think the main recommendation that I would have is for policymakers looking to use any sort of tool to process data on a large scale to help them in making decisions. It's very important to understand how the tools work and where the data comes from, so that you can be sure that whatever output is created by these tools, you understand how it was created, so that you're not misled by, inappropriate conclusions that might be derived from the data. That would be my main recommendation.
I can follow. From my point of view, it's really important to start adopting new tools, new instruments, such as the human rights impact assessment as a tool to ensure the compliance with ethical mandates. And also to start enriching the staff with ethics expert within the public administration, like with the same process we did for the data protection officer in many companies and in many institutions. There should be the same approach regarding the ethics officer. This is my suggestion.
I can just repeat what I told in my presentation. The forgotten ethic issue is to deeply consider environmental sustainability, which has a strong link also with the social innovation, the social management in view of a green future that we should have.
Okay, many thanks for this question. Maybe if there is no suggestion for the public, I will maybe just ask one of you each one specific question regarding your presentation in order to going even more in detail regarding a few topics. For example, since Martin and Alberto started, I will ask them one question regarding their presentation. So, since you said, big data used to support policy making may also include information regarding individual or personal data, how can policymakers ensure that they can leverage such data lawfully?
Yes, thank you. I will try to take this question. Yes, as you know, the General Data Protection Regulation, which is applicable starting from 2018, has created a common legal framework at European level on data protection and privacy, and has set some common principles that should be considered in general while processing personal data, so data which can be related to an individual, and more specifically when managing big data, it provides us with some key principles that should be followed while managing this kind of data. I will suggest to focus on two principles. The first one is the principle of accuracy, which is the principles that require the principle requiring the fact that the data collected are updated, are reliable, and provide a reliable information regarding the data subject. This is very important for two orders of reasons. On the one hand, it allows to avoid biased outputs of the policy making and the use of big data, and to avoid phenomena like discriminations. And on the other hand, from an effectiveness and efficiency standpoint, the use of data that are not accurate, that are not up to date, lead to policies which are not effective, since they are not aligned with the evidences that they should be based on. Another key requirement, another key principles, is the principle of lawfulness. So the source of the data and the connected data processing should be based on a legal basis. So each time we collect some data, also at big data level, we shall investigate if they have been collected based on a legal ground that it is defined by the GDPR. This may be the consent of the data subject. This may be a public interest somehow recognized at by both European or national law. This may be also the need to perform a contract, and this leading, for example, to the collection of big data in order to perform public services. But each time we need to ensure that the data subjects have been duly informed regarding the data referred to them that are going to be processed, and we also ensure that the same data are compliant with the legal grounds set forth by the GDPR.
Okay, perfect. That was a very precise answer. Many thanks for that. I don't know if anybody has some to add to what Alberto said. Otherwise, I would like to ask one question also to Vanni. So, how to tackle greenwashing with data privacy and ethical issues?
Thank you. This is very relevant. As you probably everybody understood, I'm very strong involved in green teams. So greenwashing is really something that it's a nasty practice used by too many companies, corporations, and also in dealing with data privacy and data management. There are a lot of different angles of this terrible practices. I think the way to avoid that is just to perform impact analysis, environmental impact analysis in a deep way. So considering in the DPIA this important issue, this is the way, according to my idea, to solve this problem.
Many thanks for that contribution, Vanni. I don't know if anybody has something to add regarding this topic. Otherwise, Marina, I would like to ask you also one question. Which are the main explainability challenges in relation to artificial intelligence empowered policy making?
Okay, thank you for the question. Well, we know that transparency and explainability are really essential for ensuring democracy and also for ensuring trust, which is a prerequisite for the acceptance and the use, the uptake of the technology. On the other hand, we have to be aware that explainability is not a panacea. It also implies challenges. First of all, we can think, especially in contexts where using deep learning technology, machine learning techniques, and neural network, that there might be a sort of trade-off between performance and explainability. In fact, larger and more complex models ask for more difficult to understand solution. And what we can do in this context is to rely on accountability measure to support explainability. On the other hand, especially in the policymaking context, there is often the need to find balances and compromises between different interests at stake. And this implies that some difficulty arise for the algorithm to function, which means, in fact, that the algorithm need a clear goal to be able to operate. And in situations where there are many competing interests at stake and not a specific goal, it is very difficult for them to effectively and operate well. And these are the two main concerns, which can be also enriched by another, considering that the level of explainability is different in the different context.
Okay, many thanks for the answer. It was super precise. So I think that we have just 5 minutes left. So I do not think that there will be time to make another circulation question. So I don't know if there are any questions from the audience. Otherwise, I would like to ask you one latest question that may sound general, but I mean, I just want maybe your rapid opinion on this question. So what do you think should be the recommendation to policymakers when looking to implement impact analysis and prediction tools for evidence-based policymaking? I don't know who wants to start between you all.
I can start. I think that it will be really important to make use, as I mentioned in my presentation, to high quality data, to take care that the quality of the data set to train machine is really high. In this way, we can count on reliable solutions. This is my idea.
Many thanks for that. What about the other? Do you agree on this view, or do you think that should be something more, other recommendation that should be followed by policymakers regarding the impact analysis and prediction tools? What are your thoughts?
And maybe just maybe we can also add, and I know if especially my colleagues agree on that, to refer to the standardization activities as a source of inspiration. They are really, really important in this moment, such as the Global Initiative on Ethics of Autonomous and Intelligent Systems. They can be useful. What do you think?
Well, I think I can follow up on Marina's point here on standardization to say that often, for example, in the context of our project, when we are considering what requirements from a legal and ethical perspective the project should meet, rather than doing, reinventing the wheel and thinking of what we think might be important, where there are standards, such as, for example, the high-level expert group's guidelines on trustworthy AI, the NESIS draft certification for cybersecurity and cloud services. These sort of standards can help they can help as an authoritative inspiration for requirements to be met. And of course, maybe a project can't follow the standard fully, but it can use it as guidance in terms of what requirements should be implemented in the project from a practical perspective. So when we apply this to analytical tools, we obviously want to try to make sure that these analytical tools are aligned with any relevant standards related to, I don't know, AI or cloud-based computing that they might be built on.
Okay, many thanks for that. I do not think that we will have time to open a debate on that, because I think that in 30 seconds this room was closed. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining this task, and thank you very much for our speakers for sharing their knowledge on this topic. It is a very important topic, and also it is something that will be much discussed in the future regarding legal and ethical considerations or the use of data. So as I said again, thank you very much, everybody, for joining today, and thanks for your presentation.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.